Captions are available. If you would like to use them, just turn them on with the menu bar at the bottom of the screen. So if you scroll your mouse to the bottom of the screen, you'll see both the Q&A and chat box, as well as caption options at the bottom. So with that, it's my pleasure to first introduce Shelley Mowry, our Herd Museum Guild President. I'll go through a quick introduction for Shelley and excited to hear about some recap over the weekend. So, Shelley was raised in Scottsdale, Arizona, and as early as third grade informed friends that someday she would be a volunteer at the Herd Museum. That someday began in 1981 when she volunteered in the herd shop for 3 years, resigning when her son was born. After she retired from SRP MIC, Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community, in 2008, she resumed her affiliation with the herd, joining the Herd Guild and becoming a Las Guias in 2010. That same year, she was asked to chair the Student Art Committee, which she did for 2 years before migrating to the Herd Museum Guild Fair Exhibitors Committee, which she headed for 3 years. Following this, she became chairperson of the Herd Museum Guild Indian Fair and Market for 2 years. Obviously, Shelley's skill at connecting people and their talents is a great asset to the Guild. Shelley, do you want to turn on your volume for me and help me with this recap of a beautiful weekend of Indian Fair and Market?
Welcome. I'm so pleased to be a part of this that Mike had asked me to be a part of this webinar today. And let me see if I can get my picture.
There you are. Hello.
Thank you. I'm not technically oriented, but anyway, I wanted to welcome you because our best of show is such an exciting and important part of the fair. Mike and I talked about this before this presentation started, and what would be an interesting thing to share with you. And one would be the importance of the Best of Show award. And as many of you know, the Herd Guild 67th fair this year, annual Indian market and fair, is that we, excuse me, that we have at least 600 to 650 artists that actually participate in our market. And out of that, several hundred of them do enter our juried competition, which the judging is on Thursday before the fair actually starts. And what happens is when an artist is either invited into our market or is juried in, because we don't just accept any artist who applies, we have to make sure that they're of the quality that we expect as the guild, the museum, and the people that come to our fair and market. And so once they enter, they could enter anywhere between 2 and 3 pieces of art. And we have anywhere between 10 and 11 classifications. And within each classification, there's divisions. So when an artist enters, and they go through a several step process of determining how they're going to make it up to the top prize, which is the Best of Show, which we are very proud to say the last several years we've had it as a $25,000 prize. We really want to emphasize that we look for the best, and the person that does win knows that they're considered one of the finest American Indian artists for that year because of the emphasis that we put on the monies that can be earned. But when they go through the judging process, they first start in the classification. So if we have jewelry as one of the classifications, there's anywhere between 8 and 9 divisions. They have to win whichever division that they enter in. So out of that, if there's 8 or 9 division winners, that those not 8 or 9 division winners have to go through a process of determining by the judges which one is actually going to win the classification. And then after all those parts of the judging has been processed, then the judges come together and make a determination who is actually going to be the best of show or the finest of finest. And one way that I like to compare it is to the Oscars, if you will, because you've got Screen Actors Guild, Golden Globes, and I'm sure there's a couple others, but you do earn your way around various award ceremonies that you can win, but the top award to win is an Oscar. So that's what I like to compare our Best of Show, because when an artist wins our Best of Show, for us, again, that is the best of the best, and we want to share it with all. And it really ups the reputation of the artist, whether it's a brand new artist or whether it's an existing long-time artist. But it really shows to the community that their work is deemed to be so well done that they get the top award. I hope that kind of makes it a little bit easier to understand how important of this. So when our winner this year, Rebecca, won, it was so exciting. And to hear her speech Friday night, how humble and loving she is towards her life, her culture, her history, and that clay is very much a part of her. So thank you again for listening when we have Rebecca talk. And thank you for supporting the museum and the Guild and our Indian Fair and Market. Thank you.
Yeah, and Shelley, really quickly, is it okay to maybe just do a quick recap of some of the items on the screen? Um, just maybe a couple
Yes, what I
comments.
like about this particular basket is it's got the dragonflies. And when we're taught in our Las Guias or docent training class the importance of butterflies, excuse me, dragonflies, and the importance that they carry to potable water. So when here in the Southwest in particular, dragonflies are a very important insect because where we find them, we find potable or drinking water. And the black and the white and the checkerboard is just a very fascinating basket. And I believe I saw it Thursday night that it was a smaller basket. And so when I look at that, you see how they coil and make that and weave the basket. It's quite extraordinary. Thank you. Oh, and Kenneth Johnson, who's primarily a jeweler, put this together. And when we see that, the detail that's in the craft that he has handled so well on making the figures and the faces and the expressions, and yet you see it's on a very contemporary piece of work that all four characters are standing on. And of course, Jamie and Sandra Acoma, known for their bird beadwork, soft sculptures, which we have an exhibit in our Sandra Day O'Connor gallery. And Jamie also is a clothing designer. This is beaded on both sides, and it's actually I don't remember the story and I apologize for that, but it's actually a purse that could be taken off and carried, and it zips all the way around. So it looks like a backpack of sorts. And it's just very interesting. It's about the Mr. and Mrs. Rabbit. And again, I'm sorry, I don't know the story on that. It's quite a lengthy one. Diana, you may remember the story on the meaning of this particular artwork.
We'll be sharing that in upcoming information.
Okay, thank you.
Shelley, thank you so much, the Herd Guild President, for sharing those remarks. Really appreciate it. And please stay on the call. But as we move forward, we want to go ahead and introduce our moderator for today, Diana Pardue, Chief Curator of the Herd Museum, and the wonderful Rebecca Lucario, our honored guest for this talk. A quick introduction for Rebecca, and then she'll go ahead and speak for herself. Rebecca Lucario was born in 1951 and is a member of the Yellow Corn Clan. She has been active in making pottery since 1965 and was taught by her grandmother Dolores S. Sanchez. She specializes in Members revival style with animal designs and eye dazzlers. She says she does not measure or plot out her designs with instruments, but rather spaces the design out by eye. So with that, it is my pleasure to hand it over to Diana and Rebecca. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mike. Rebecca, we are so pleased that you can join us today, and congratulations on your award for the remarkable entry that you had. A lot of our visitors are familiar with all of the work and effort that goes into making pottery, but some of them may not know the details and just how the very many steps that it takes to do that. And I also just want to mention before we do that, that you have been winning awards for pottery since for gosh, at Santa Fe Market since the early 80s and at the Herd Market since the 90s. But I do think this is your first Best of Show at the Herd. And again, congratulations. But thank you for your willingness to talk with us about pottery making. And I think you were going to start just by talking about how to gather the clay or how to get the clay for the work that you do.
Yes. Okay, well, I am Rebecca Lucario, and I live at the old Acoma Pueblo right below the mesa. I've lived there all my life. My grandmother raised me, and she's the one that taught me the art. I used to just watch her. I did most of the cleaning and cooking while she did her pottery. And when I was finally able to get in there and use the clay, she made me go through the whole process of gathering my clay, my paints, the slip. And of course, I would, just observe her firing outdoors. And that was way before the electric kilns even came out. We used to just gather the cow manure and dry them, and that's what we used to fire the pottery. But it's a lot of work from start to finish. The main difficult thing to do right now is gathering the clay. The road is really washed out where we get the clay, and you can only go so far with a vehicle, and the rest is just on foot. So it's like a family affair. You have to get as many of the guys you can together, and we just go up there and get the clay and carry back a little at a time because it is heavy, especially when it comes out of the ground. It's damp. And the process is like you can't just take it home, soak it, and start making. It has to be, the clay has to be cleaned. When it's dry, you have to get it all dry first when you get it home. Once it dries, after maybe about 2 3 days, then we soak the clay and get all the foreign matter because there's like little roots and things in there. And then we dry the clay again. And we have to do this about 3 or 4 times. And then we finally are able to grind it. We grind it on a rock. All the materials that I have were handed down to me. Those were what my grandparents had, my grandmother used, and that's what I still use today. The clay, once it's ground up, we sift it, and then we have to grind and up the shards. The old shards work the best. The new shards are really hard to grind. So the old shards are easier to grind. Once that's ground up, we add that to the new clay. But you have to make sure that you don't add too much because if you add too much of the ground up shards, the pots will crack when you're making them and they dry too fast.
And
So,
Rebecca, may I ask, so that's the ground up pottery is like the temper. So it gives the clay some more strength when you add
yes,
it.
yes. And right now, with the clay that we were using, it's you can't really add too much, and because, like I said, it just cracks, especially when you're doing the plates or when you're doing the large jars. They crack right around the top of the jar. So we just, for myself, like a pan of clay, I would only add maybe a handful of the shards, and that's all I add. And then once it dries, then we, like I said, you have to grind it again. Then once it's ground up and ready to use, then you can start making. And the making is the fun part for me. I can make several pieces in one day, and then when they're dry, then we add the white slip. It's like a clay. You have to add either, if you don't have rainwater, I use distilled water, and I put that on the pots after they've been shaped. When they're dry, then we burnish it with a polishing stone. And once that's all done, then they're ready to paint. And mixing the paint takes time. So right after I make the pottery, I usually go and start mixing my paint at least 2 or 3 days before I start painting. And that, like I mentioned, is time consuming because and then your paint is has when you mix it all up, then we add just a little bit of what's called the bee wheat plant, and those you don't grow every summer. So when you do get some and it's boiled and you make your bee wheat plant to mix to your paint, you have to make sure you have a lot to last you. And that's what we add. And you have to know how much to add because if you add too much, it will peel even after the firing. So you have to know how to mix it. And that's what a lot of other potters have come to me for, to show them how to mix the paint and how much of that bee wheat plant to add. And I don't mind sharing that information with the potters around here at Acoma. I would like to, well, we did teach a pottery class one year, my sister Marilyn and I. And that was the question that always came up. Well, how do you mix your paint? Where do you get your paints? And that's another thing that a lot of people get upset about. They will ask where you get the orange and the yellows, and they just usually point out a general area for people to go look. But for me, actually take the people there and say, this is where you get it. I'll show you.
And
And so,
Rebecca, may I ask, so is the paint a rock or a mineral and that the bee weed is added to then, or is it a
yes,
clay
now
also?
that one is like an iron oxide, the black. It's a rock. And
Mhm.
there was a picture there where the paint is that we mix that with water, just a little bit of water. And then you just have to get the paint from the rocks. We usually go by the wash by below Mount Taylor, or we go by west of Acoma. There's a place where the wash comes down and we gather our rocks there. And usually the rocks, some of them like to go get the real black rocks. And but if your paint is black, it usually comes out more like a reddish color. But if your paint is like red, when it fires, it will fire a darker color. And when you're mixing when you're painting, you have to make sure, especially with the large pots, you have to make sure that you have enough color so that if you need to go back and do a touch up or a refire, you have the paint that will match, because the paint doesn't always come out the same color, especially the black.
I
And
think that's
so
I'm sorry, Rebecca, that's a really important point because I think that some people don't know that you actually, for your pottery, you paint before it's fired,
yes,
not after it's
all
fired.
yes, all the work is completed on the pot before the fire. The last step is the firing. And with the
Thank
colors like the orange and the yellow and different shades of the brown, those are clay. And we have to go out and look for those. And we strain them. We add again, I use rainwater or distilled water, and I will strain my clay. And we experiment a lot with that because sometimes you don't get any color. It will just burn right off. We found a real pretty lavender color, and there was no color. It just burned off. But
you.
we did find some, and it's just a light lavender color. And then we have a light yellow, and then we have one that's yellow, but after it's fired, it turns like a reddish color. So they're all different, and we just try to get only. We've always been told only to gather what you're going to use. You don't abuse, what you get. So, and then sometimes, people will cover up the area, especially like when you get clay, people throw dirt back in there. And then when you go get it, then you have to start digging all that dirt back out. But that's how we gather all our materials. And when we paint, then it's like you were saying that some people, we've done a demonstration of painting at Andrea Fisher's gallery, and people will say, well, I actually see it, I'm here watching you paint it, and I still don't believe you can paint like that. But it's like, on the plates, we start from the center and we work out. And on the large pots, the best brushes to use are the yucca brushes, because you start at the top and of the jar, and you work on down to the bottom of the jar. And it may look like there aren't a lot of mistakes, but believe me, I make a million mistakes on those pots. And my grandmother used to use the pointed part of the yucca. It's like it's pointed, it's like a needle. That's what she used to dry, and that's what she used to use to scrape her mistakes off the pots. But of course, now we have other tools. We can go to a ceramic shop, and they have these needle point tools that we use to erase the mistakes. And some still do use the yucca to erase their mistakes. And I know a lot of potters still use the yucca plant to paint their pottery. Now, I do also use commercial brushes. My commercial brushes, they just carry more paint. Some of them are have the I have to shape my brushes so it'll carry to paint, do the colors, and I have a brush for every color that I have. So that's how the painting is done. And of course, with the when you're going to fire, it has to be, if you're going to outdoor fire, it has to be a calm day with a slight breeze. If there's no breeze, um it kind of like the pots don't come out very well. But if there's a slight breeze, it will come out. The white slip really does come out a lot in there. And there's also with the manure, if the manure is damp, you will get these cloud like blue marks or gray marks on the pottery. So we usually, when we fire, we let the whole thing just burn out down to the ashes. Sometimes, you want to, if you uncover it too soon, the pots will crack when there's a breeze. So it's best just to let them cool down, the firing to cool down completely by itself. Then we take the top off the ashes, and then we just let them set for a while. And usually they take them out, put them on a um, either on the dirt, or you can use um, pottery shards or something just to put the pots on and let them cool.
And Rebecca, I think that's one thing that uh, it's good for collectors and people interested in pottery to know that it is risky to do outdoor firing, and you can have a work that you've spent a lot of time on only to have it crack in the firing, and then all of that work is gone.
Yes, when I first fired the first time, um, I went and fired outdoors, and my grandmother was saying, "Did you put them in the oven?" Because we still had a stove, a wood stove, and she would put her pottery in there to dry. And I told her no, and she said, "Okay, well, go ahead and start the fire." She didn't say, "Well, it's gonna, this may happen or whatever." She just let me fire them, and I fired 12 pieces. I only got 3 out.
Mhm.
Sounded like popcorn, they were popping left and right.
Mhm.
So they have to be dry. And when you're mixing when you're making the pottery, you really have to pack your clay. That's the hard part. It's for me, it's hard on my shoulders, my elbow, my wrists, because you really have to pack it. You have to knead that clay to get all the air bubbles out. If there's a air pocket in there, it will pop. Or if there's like a foreign object in there, if you don't wash your clay good, there could still be a piece of um, any kind of foreign object in there, maybe a root or something in there, and your pot will crack or pop.
And you mentioned that with the loss, sometimes if something cracks or snaps, it might take out another piece next to it that's just
Yes,
fine. But as it breaks, it might create havoc, more or less, as it
yes,
takes out other works.
yes, it's true.
Well, this is a wonderful image of removing the pottery from the firing, and so are the vessels still hot when you actually take them out?
Yes, yes, they are. They're really hot. So sometimes, like my grandmother used to just fire the pots and leave it overnight. She won't take them out till the next day.
But you take yours out. Why do you decide to go ahead and take them out rather than leave them overnight? Any particular reason?
I'm just curious to see how they come out.
For sure. Well, I'd love to go back and talk a little bit more about your painting, because I think that's what one of the things that mystifies everyone. So you said when you well, first of all, let me ask you if I may. I've heard from some of the other ceramic artists that making a plate is difficult. That trying to make the plate itself, that it's difficult to get that shape, and it might crack. A plate might crack. Do you find that any particular shape is more difficult than another shape for you?
For me, it's the plates. I've had, like you can get something perfectly round, cut it out, but the clay shrinks.
Mm.
So it'll throw off the shape of the plate. And so you just about have to try to shape it out with water.
Mm.
But if you use too much water, it will crack. So you just have to be patient. And sometimes I'm not patient. I don't have the patience to. So I only do a small part of it and then see if it's suitable to continue painting or to put this white slip on. And sometimes they just get thrown back into the clay, the pan of clay, and start all over again. And the other one is, I think, is the large jars. The seed pots are fun to make. They don't crack as much, but you still do because the seed pots are two pieces put together, and the seam is right along the edge in the middle.
And the seed
So
pots don't actually have are they solid on both sides, or do you have a hole or a perforation
you
in there?
have to have a hold in it. Some will just put the hole on the bottom, or the seed pots will have a hold on the top. But I just put a small hole on the top on my seed pots. But they will crack if you don't seal it well enough, or if the piece dries on you too fast, they will crack at the seam.
And so, painting, so we have your award-winning work on the screen here, and you said you start at the center. Now, Shelley
Yeah,
and I were talking before, and um, we find this unbelievable, I guess, your ability to paint. So you start at the center. Do you
yes.
do you
You
use
start
any
at the
kind of
center, and then when you're starting to when you start in the center and then you work your way out, that's how you find out that your plate has um, lost its shape. You'll have more room on the side, so you just have to adjust it. And I know people say it looks so even. No, it's not even. You're never gonna get a perfect design on a plate. It may look that way, but they don't come out that way because of the shape. All pots are, you just have to work with the shape of the pot.
So in the center of this one, did you do like designs as you started to paint? Did you do like two lines that made it in quarters and then get smaller and smaller, or did you do
Yes.
it like that's how you did the center?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. I just sectioned it out in half, then in quarters, and then I just kept breaking it down. And then when I felt like that was what I wanted to do or how I wanted to come out, then I just kept painting. I just keep painting. And then sometimes I would paint the design um, on the whole plate. And then at one time, then I just said, well, um, and for me, that's the way I am. I like to paint different designs. I like to try different designs. And so a lot of my work is like, I know that sometimes you'll find some that are the same pattern, the same design, but I just paint whatever comes to mind or however I feel. And I used to get upset when I was younger. My grandmother would tell me, I would tell her, well, it looks crooked or the design didn't come out good. She goes, these things take time. And she would tell me that there are never two people alike, and you are never gonna find two pots alike. So I just had to learn to deal with a lot of my mistakes. Sometimes you can go back and erase it and then apply some white slip, polish it over, and continue with your design. But when you do that, you have to make sure you really erase that mistake so that when you apply your white slip and paint over it, that design does not come through when it's fired.
Rebecca, do you ever sketch in advance? Do you do sketches of designs too, just on paper to get ideas or?
Yes, yes, I do. I do. And I will have like a pattern that I think that I want to try.
Mhm.
And so I'll do it on a piece of paper. And I have a book that of some of my work, or sometimes I just take pictures of my plates, my pottery. But sometimes I'll have a difficult time painting a pot the same design. Like there was one, um, I saw a jar, and they wanted the same design as the plate that I had there, but it didn't work. It didn't come out, so I had to change it a little to fit the jar.
Let's look, if we can, Mike, at that photo of the jar, that nice photo of one of the jars. And so, Rebecca, you were saying for a jar, you start at the rim of the jar,
Yeah,
and then you
at
work
the
your
top
way down.
down.
Now, for this one, did you draw straight lines down and then make um, the triangles, or did you go all around the rim and just add a row after row after row?
No, you can start at the top and then bring it down, but like I mentioned, the pots are not shaped perfectly,
Mhm.
even a jar. And I tried that where you can get it where you can get a pencil and a string and try to section it off in fourths and break it down. But because of the shape of the jar, it doesn't come out the same. It's not even. Your spaces are wide in some places, narrow in others. And so you have to kind of like twist your design. But it's kind of hard for some of them. So sometimes you just have to uh, either try a different pattern or just leave it however it comes out at the end. But you can erase the whole design. I did that with one of my pots. I just did not like it. I don't know, for some reason I just did not like what I designed on there. and it was already all lined and ready to fill in. So I just got me some sandpaper and I sanded the design off and I started all over again.
Oh, that raises a point that I was going to ask earlier. So you build a pottery jar from coils. Do you use a
Yes.
gourd to smooth it out? Do you use your hands first and then a gourd to smooth it out and get the shape?
Yes. You just keep adding coils until it depends on how big you want the jar to be. With most of the jars that I make, I just add 2 coils, and the medium-sized jars is just 1 coil. And then the I would say maybe the 4 and 5 inch ones, it's like a pinch pot. It's just a piece of clay. I don't add a coil. But if it's over that, over 5 or 6 inches, then I will add a coil and just build it up. And I use the gourds, and some of my tools are made from the red wood that my grandfather made. I even have some tools that my grandfather made from a coconut. He just cut it up and he smoothed them out, and that's what I use. And whatever tools I use, and sometimes it's a broken piece of pottery, I just shape it the way I want on a sandstone rock, and I use that, or I can use any kind of whatever I have. I even use a corned beef lid to scrape my the excess clay off when I'm ready to polish the pottery, or I'll use a skull lid. I go down by the casino. They have a lot of skull lids at the parking lot, so I pick those up, and that's what I use to scrape my clay off the pottery. And we just scrape them to the thinness that we want, and we just smooth them out, polish them out, and let them dry.
And then I think another interesting thing that you mentioned, the clay has to be a certain um, have a certain amount of moisture, not too much moisture for it to hold its shape too.
Yes.
And as you're building it and adding coils, have you ever had a situation where part of it's too dry and then you get a crack along the area where you've added a coil? By now, I'm sure you probably don't, but when you first started making pottery.
Yes, I did. You have to keep them out of the sunlight, and just build the pottery up. And if you're gonna break for lunch, or you have to go away from the pot, and not if you're not going to be able to finish it and you have to wait till the next day, we usually use plastic and we cover it, and we just wet the top so that it doesn't dry at the top of the pottery.
Mhm. Well, I think there are so many, complexities, I think, to making pottery and so much time investment, as you mentioned. Um, but what are there other things that you wanted to share with us about? Uh, so you did say that you mostly learned by watching your grandmother. Did she also give you specific instructions when you were first, seriously making pottery too?
Yes, she just told me that how I had to really pack my clay. That she emphasized a lot, and I did learn that the hard way when I made some even small pieces, and that popped on me when I fired them. And I thought I packed my clay good, but it takes a lot of uh, strong, you know you need a lot of muscles to do the packing of the clay, especially the large ones, because that really has to be packed. And then you roll them out, the coil. And sometimes you have to add 2 or 3 coils on the real large pots. So that's the thing that she would say. And then, of course, with adding the shards, I found that out myself. I was adding a lot of too much of the shards, so I had to cut back. And then I realized that the clay is not the way it used to be, so you don't really add that much for to the clay, especially nowadays.
Well, I would think that some people would look at your work and also think that you're a master mathematician, just in your ability to use these all of these shapes and complexities so well. Um, I know that we have Rebecca. Before we go to questions from those who are watching the virtual art talk, is there anything else that you wanted to share about your work or tell us about your work before we go to questions?
No, not really. Some of them don't have any meanings. The only thing my grandmother used to tell me was the lines represent the rain. The orange on the bottom of the jars, or the orange color, represents the sun. The black represents the clouds. And some you'll have like the step figures, or the design that has like those represent you. You'll have like a lightning pattern or the kiva steps. So there are certain things that that have meaning, but um when they told me that I needed a name for my plate, I was like, I had to come up with a name because I didn't name it. I said, what does that mean to name it? And so I just said, I looked at my plate, and the it has that swirl pattern in the middle with the rain and the clouds, but the center always represents the North Star. So I said North Star with the four directions, and that's the four on there. So that's what I just named that plate.
That's a great title. Mike, do you can you share some of the questions? Are you willing to share some of the questions that have come in?
Yes, of course. Thank you. And Rebecca, again, thank you for being so generous with your explanations. We're getting a lot of good comments in the chat box about just how excited people are. So, some of these questions I think you've hinted at a little bit. One of the interesting ones from Mary was: has the clay in your area changed since you were young? Is that why you don't use much of the ground? Why you don't need to use much of the ground shards?
Yes, because the place where we used to get the clay, that was really good clay. It all caved in, and there's no way you can get under that. That I think that rock was like about maybe, gosh, I don't know. It was thick, and people would just pile rocks like it's gonna hold the big rock up. But it just got too dangerous. And then with the water, the rain, and everything, the whole thing just caved in. So people started digging other places in the general area to get the clay. And other people have found clay like in the Acomita area, and uh, west of Acoma, just wherever you can find the clay. But it's not all the same, because some of the clay, when you try a different kind of clay, I usually just make a small pot to see how it's going to fire. And some of that clay, it may look gray. When you fire it, it's like a pinkish color when you fire it. And even if you add the white slip, that pink color just comes through that white slip. And I didn't like it, so some of the clays I don't use.
Thank you. One of the other questions, and maybe I can combine these, is Janet would like to know the size of the award-winning plate, and Doug would like to know how long did it take to make it.
It didn't take, I didn't even measure it. I didn't even measure to see uh, how big the plate was, but it took about 3 days to make. But the painting took about, oh gosh, I would say maybe about almost 3 months, because I would just paint a little of it, and then I said, "Oh, I don't." I was hesitant. I was gonna just erase the whole the design that I put on there. I thought, when am I going to finish this? It's taking forever. So I just put it aside and I would come back to it when I had time. And when I finally did finish it, then it was like about 3 days erasing the mistakes. And then I waited another 3 days to fire it. So every piece, I don't, sit there and paint, and then it's hard on my eyes, so I don't sit there like 8 hours or 4 hours and then stop and come back. I just paint when there's the sun is out. I cannot paint by the lights. I cannot paint indoors. I have a place where I paint and I
Wow.
sit by the window, and when I, you know, the light through the window is what I need on a bright sunny day. When it's cloudy, I don't paint. I just make or do something else.
And Rebecca, I would think, you would want to add to that the time it took to gather and process the clay, the time it took you actually to make it and then paint it, and then the time you took to fire it. It's a lot of time too, in
Yes,
addition
it's
to
a lot.
just the painting.
Yes, it takes a lot of time from start to finish. I've been asked that question so many times, like how long does it take to make? And if you have the clay all ready to make, then it only takes like about 2 or 3 days and it's done. But if you don't have the clay, you have to go get it, and it takes longer. And you can reuse the scrapings. Like if I have a jar or a seat pots, whatever excess clay you have after the scrapings, you can reuse that clay to make new pots.
That's such good information. I have some specific questions in here that I think maybe some visitors are really trying to learn from with their own making. We had one of the guests asks if you have a preference for manure, or if that changes with any of the projects that you're working on. Um, does there have are there any changes in the manure that you use for the firing process?
No, but my grandmother used to use sheep manure. She would get that uh, a little of it, but it would burn. It fires at a higher temperature than the regular cow manure, and it will burn. And you can see the how high the firing is when you take it out on the orange. It's noticeable on the orange paint of the pottery. So it's best just to use the cow manure.
Thank you. And one of the last questions before we wrap up. Um, let's see. Let me find it. Stephanie wanted to know if there's anything special you have to do to an unfired piece that you're painting so it doesn't dry out too much.
Repeat that question.
Is there anything special you have to do to an unfired piece that you're painting so it doesn't dry out?
Um, are you talking about the paint so it doesn't dry out, or what? What are you? I'm not sure I understand the question, because
Okay.
the paint soaks into the pot right away. You don't really have to do anything. There's no really you don't have to worry about the paint once it goes on. But if it is like if there's moisture in there, like if it's raining, you can't apply the orange. It will not soak into the pot. The paint runs.
Okay. Good to know. There's about 5 other questions that I think we ran out of time today for. That means that so many people enjoyed this talk and really are just enamored with your process. So we really thank you, Rebecca. Some
You're
other
welcome.
comments. Yeah, in the comments, people are saying absolutely wonderful art, clearly worth the wait. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. So this was such a wonderful talk. And I want to just wrap up with a couple announcements. But again, Shelley and Diana, thank you so much for your guidance and support. Rebecca, thank you so much for your time and your willingness to explain your process and these photos, these firing photos and painting photos. Those were amazing to see. Yes, all around, just thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mm. And just as a reminder, everyone, I have included the link to the upcoming virtual art talk featuring Bob Houses and guests. So if you would like to register using that link, you're welcome to. But as for that, our conversation is done. Rebecca, is there any last words you'd like to share with all of the guests who have been on the call with us?
No, the only thing I want to mention on the plate, that plate was kiln fired because of the moisture that we had. So, and it's cold, you can't fire because, like I mentioned, they will crack. So I did kiln fire that plate. But like I do double fire, the outdoor and the kiln fire. But a lot of the pots that you saw in there, they are fired outdoors. And a lot of the pieces that we're going to enter, like for the shows, we fire outdoors.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone's patience with my camera today. You're just able to hear my voice, but on our next one, I'll make sure to have it going. And we will see everyone for the next one. Rebecca, take care, be safe, and congratulations on your win.
Thank you.
Bye bye, everyone.
Thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome.